Hi, I'm Jason with Fresh Start Detail in Beaverton, Oregon. I've been a detailer for 27 years, since 1995, and so today I'm going to talk about clay. Why clay? Because I get a lot of people bringing their cars to me, asking me what clay is, why do we use it, what's the tool. It's really interesting, kind of silly in the beginning when it first came out. I also get a lot of cars come in that have been damaged by do-it-yourselfers trying to use clay themselves. And so this video is going to eliminate all of that. You're going to be able to do it yourself safely. So first off, let's just talk about, you notice I just set this up in my driveway. Pretty informal, right? But talk about clay. Why clay? Clay is used to remove contaminants from the surface of your car. So let's say you've washed your car and so it's clean, nothing's on it. Whether you run it through the car wash or wash it yourself, it's clean. Okay, so this is a little rinseless wash here. This surface was already clean, right? I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. So don't think this is scratching the surface. But let's say it's clean, but maybe you can still hear something when you rub your hand on it. It's not quite, or maybe you can even see things on it that shouldn't be there, like water spots from hard water. Or maybe overspray, the neighbor painted his deck, and next thing you know, half your car's got this roughness or these spots on it. Things like that. We call those bonded contaminants. And that means contaminants that they're hanging onto your paint and they're not just getting washed off easily. So clay is a way to remove most of those safely. There's other methods we use for different contaminants, but clay is the number one thing, the first step that we use. Okay? So that's why we use clay, to get it off. Now, here's another little trick. If you're not sure if you need to use clay or not, now if you can't see anything, you'd say, well, Jason, if I can't see anything, how do I know? Do I really need clay? Well, you can, as long as the paint is clean, you can just take your hand and rub on it. Can you hear that? To me, that sounds a little rough. There may be a little something going on there. Another little trick we professionals use. You know, clay came out in the late 80s. By the 90s, it was popular amongst us professional detailers. But people didn't know, the consumer didn't know what it was. And so it sounded like a gimmick. And so we would say, well, we got to charge you more because we need to clay your paint to get it perfect. Yeah, right, Jason. We heard that so much. So the little trick you can use too, and the sales trick we used for 20-something years, put your hand in a sandwich bag and now rub it on the paint. You will feel a huge difference. This may feel pretty slick. You're like, yeah, that's not bad. Put that in there like that and feel, and you will feel all kinds of contaminants on your paint. And that was a sales tactic we used back in the 90s. We would have the customer do that. We'd say, the paint looks pretty good, but put your hand in here and rub it on the surface, and it's just like, boom, sold. Now we use clay on every single car we detail. Every detailer does. It's just the smart way to do things. Is the way we should be doing things, okay? So that's why we use clay, and that's a little pro tip for you right there. Now there's a few different kinds of clay before we get into it, so you know what to get. It's super confusing on the line. If you're trying to do your research to buy clay, what do you use? So just somewhat quickly, the original is just called a clay bar, okay? These natural clay bars, this one's pretty used up, but you can kind of see what they look like. They're just literally clay. Okay, now they're not just any clay. These are engineered products. It's not just clay, you know, down at the art store. So this is called a clay bar for obvious reasons. This one's almost used up. This is what they look like when they get really dirty. And here's another little thing about clay bars, especially the older style. So we have this clay bar, this old used one of mine. I've used at the shop for a long time. I use mostly clay towels now. Okay, so here's a drawback of these things. If you do use these, is like right now it's cold outside. This is hard. I mean, it's almost like a brick. So you have to knead it. You want to warm it up just a little bit. Plus it's cold outside, so the panel's cold. You want it like 60 to 70 degrees is ideal, but I mean, what are you going to wait till the weather's just perfect? So you knead it a little bit till it gets a little bit pliable. And then you use the same procedure here with lubricant I'll just do a little small spot for you. Clay itself, and then hold this flat. Not a lot of pressure at first, and back and forth. Okay, and that's it. Literally, that's it. I want to do this top section here. See, I don't know if you can hear that, but that first time down, you could hear little specks, little. That's this picking up little contaminants. Now they're so slight on this paint you can't see them. Okay, so anyway, but I wanted to tell you guys about with clay bars is a drawback of this is it picks up contaminants. That's a good thing, but it can also pick up contaminants if you do this. You're going whoops. That's easy to do. You've just dropped your clay bar, right? So you go, oh, no big deal. I'll just rinse it off and keep using it. Don't do that. Why? Because just by dropping it, it has picked up little pebbles and stuff in it from when it dropped. And so now, even though you rinsed it, it landed on a pebble, and you try to pick it out, but look at, they're like all over this thing. And all it takes is one of those pebbles that got past you, and you didn't see it, and you go like this, and you are going to scratch the daylights out of this irreparably. Okay, and the bad thing is you won't know you scratched it because it won't make any sound. You'll just keep right on doing it, and it's wet, so you won't see the damage until you're all done, and you can't wait to show your friends how this new procedure you've done with clay. And you go like this, you dry it off, and then you go, whoa, what is this scratch that looks like this? And follows the pattern. Okay, don't do that. Okay, so what do you do besides just never drop a clay bar? A couple of things. Only use as big a piece as you need. So in other words, I wouldn't use this big piece. I would knead this and get it about half this size. So if I do drop it and ruin it, I haven't wasted my whole $40 whatever clay bar. Okay. The other thing is, another danger is even if you think you've got all the rocks out of it, when you're done using clay, you knead it a little bit to get to a fresh surface. But that little pebble, wherever it is, it's still in here somewhere. So it might be the 10th time you use it from now. You finally knead it, and that little pebble comes to the surface, and you can't see it because it's all just kind of camouflaged in there, and you destroy it. Okay. This is why these kind of clay bars usually aren't recommended, and they're going out of style. The only time we as professionals really use them is if we need an aggressive one to get rid of some contaminants. And again, we have the skill, the ability to polish out micro marring. Otherwise, your clay towels are the way to go. And that's because these can be washed. If you did drop this in the dirt, now you might cringe, but you're still going to be able to pick it up, wash it off, rinse it. It doesn't get embedded in here. Okay. Another reason clay towels and synthetic clay pads and stuff are just safer for the do-it-yourselfer. Clay towels, which is where they've impregnated the clay substance onto a microfiber towel. Okay, so look like that. They also make these in mitts. They sew a mitt like that. You can put your hand in it, same thing. And then there's a synthetic clay, which this is an example of a pad. Like this could go on a buffer and be polished, or just use it by hand. They make several kinds with little handles on them. But again, that's a synthetic clay on that surface there. Okay, so different kinds of clay. I won't get too into the weeds on the different kinds. I would just say this, as a first-timer do-it-yourselfer, if you're watching this video, the synthetic clay like this or towels are the way to go. They're the safest, easiest to use, least likely to scratch your paint, things like that, especially if you follow the tips that I'm about to give you. They do make different grades of clay. In other words, more or less aggressive. And again, I won't get too into the weeds. Just know you need to start with the least aggressive. So here's two different towels. You can't tell by looking at them, they're just two different colors. But I know the gray one is the least aggressive, the blue is more aggressive. And we professionals will use this when we really got to get something off your paint that's super difficult. But it can cause quite a bit of marring on the surface that needs to be polished out. So as a do-it-yourself or first-timer, stick with the least aggressive clay, towel or synthetic, both of them kind of easy to use. Here is an example of a brand new clay bar. I'll just open it here. This one's by Pro. You can kind of see what's going on here. Is this what the kids call unboxing videos? And with a flick of the wrist, it comes right out. There we go. Okay, so this is a black one. This is a, what would they say the aggressiveness on this one was? Medium grade. Okay, so again, for a beginner, I probably wouldn't use medium grade. I would use light grade. It comes in this little cellophane. You take off a piece that you need, and then you can use it. I'll get into using clay bars, a couple of tricks on that later in the video, okay? So, there's that. So the clay. The next thing is the surfaces that are safe to clay to be used on. So obviously they're designed for paint, to be used on paint. Now, it can be used on ceramic coated paint, like this is. This has a ceramic coating on it, or non, that part doesn't matter. So clay is completely safe to use on ceramic coating. Can it be used on glass windows? Yes. I usually wouldn't, because there's other methods to get things off besides clay, but it doesn't hurt anything. But what you want to avoid is softer surfaces. Like for example, this trim, like this one is just a vinyl sticker on these Scions, and it's matte. And so you don't want to use clay on matte, because it doesn't really, it's going to like cheese grater across it. It's going to cause more damage than good. And if you do cause scratches or lines, you can't polish them out because it's on matte. So don't use it on matte. Lights, like headlights and tail lights, you absolutely, again, keep in mind that it's plastic, so it's a little softer, a little more likely to get scratched, but it's pretty hard to scratch a tail light. Clear bra or paint protection film surfaces, this one has it on the front. I would leave that to a professional. The reason is because there's so many different kinds of paint protection film. There's self-healing, non-self-healing, cheap stuff applied by dealerships, high-end stuff applied by detail shops like myself. Unless you really know what is on and what you're doing, then I would avoid it. And if you really did know what you're doing, you probably haven't watched this far in the video, right? Okay, so the reason is because you can scratch those paint protection films, and then they can't really be polished. You can't fix those. And so now you've just caused damage. So if something gets on your paint protection film and it doesn't come off with washing, you don't know how to get it off, just take it to the person that installed it or to a professional detailer. Let them deal with it, or tell them, so that you don't permanently damage something that they could have easily just told you how to get off. Okay, so now some limits of clay. I told you it's for bonded contaminants, but what exactly is that? What, when would we use it and when would we not? So things like I talked about overspray, or let's say tar that flips up on the side of your car driving down the road. Sometimes you get little bits of it. Little things like that that don't easily come off, you use clay for. But you wouldn't use clay for, like I said, hard water spots. It doesn't hurt anything. It's just usually not very effective. It'll take off some of the little minerals, but they'll still be there. Okay, so you can try it on your hard water spots, but don't expect any results. Okay, those need to be usually removed chemically. Other things are like sap, tree sap that falls on your paint. If it's that really fine stuff, just little bits here and there, it's fine. It'll be fine. But if you get those big old blobs, it's not going to work, okay? And you'll contaminate your clay bar. It'll get all wadded up in it and stuff, so limits. Some other things are oxidation. You see oxidation on your paint. In fact, I've got an example. I'll just grab the camera here and show you. Check this out. So I know the top of this scion right here is really oxidized. The clear coat's failing. So see this right here? Don't use clay on that. That's not going to do anything. If anything, it's just going to pull up some of this white dead clear coat and get in your clay bar and then contaminate it. Because then the next time you use that clay bar on a good surface, you'll scratch it. Okay, so don't use it on oxidation. So those are the limits of clay bar. Now let's just get into actually how to use it safely. So the first thing is wash the vehicle. Kind of goes without saying, but maybe not. You want all the loose dirt and stuff like that off your paint. So now this paint is clean and ready. You use a lubricant first, okay? And that's so that the clay bar will glide across the surface. And it's counterintuitive. You're like, if you're using a clay to grip onto, you're going to run it across the surface, and it works by the contaminant getting embedded into the clay as it goes across. Okay, so it grabs it and yanks it off physically. You say, well, then why would you want lubrication? That's going to counteract that. Well, it's a balance. Okay, so it's like you have a flat paint surface with a contaminant sitting on top, and then as this clay goes across, you want it to slide everywhere that doesn't need it, and then by itself it will find that little spot and grab it. If you don't do that, you can cause unnecessary marring in the paint, just micro little scratches and stuff like that, and then the clay itself will want to shred and come off onto the surface of the paint, which again is not the end of the world, but then you got to go take it back off, the little transfer marks, and you're ruining your clay faster than it needs to. So use lubrication. Read the directions. Some of them say what kind of lubrication they need. Everybody on the planet uses ONR, which is just one step no rinse by Optimum. And the directions for mixing are right here. There's two different levels for mixing. There's a specific concentration for clay lubricant. Okay, and just follow that. You don't have to use this brand. It's just what everybody on the planet uses. Okay, and then so here's a pro tip. So you can buy it like this, or us professionals put it in a dispenser like this, so that we can just go to town. We're using it all day long, right? So you can spray it on like that. You don't have to go through the expense of that. A trigger thing is fine. But the biggest pro tip here is in this bucket is how to, so I'll backtrack just a little bit, how to store these clay bars and towels and stuff like that is in this clay bucket. I'll just grab the camera and show you, it's easier. I have ONR mixed up to about 4 gallons. And it's a really cold day out, and I just put warm water in here. That's why it's kind of steamy. But this is how us professional detailers keep our clay all the time. So in other words, we don't have to take this out when we're done at the end of the day, clean it, dry it, flatten it out, and store it. We just keep it in a bucket of ONR all the time, 24/7. Once a week, we'll empty it out and put new product in. But at the bottom of this is also a grit guard, and that's so that any contaminants that you do pick up fall to the bottom of the bucket and you don't pick them back up. Okay, so a little pro tip for you there. Otherwise, storing these things is kind of a pain, because what happens is once they dry out, if you store it like that with it up against itself, that clay will fuse together. And then when you go, 6 months later, you go to use it again, you'll peel it apart and it'll go, and it'll tear and shred, and you've just ruined your, $40 to $60 towel. And yes, these are way more expensive than they seem like they should be, but they do a great job. They save you a lot of work, and they will last if you take care of them. So follow the directions on how to store them. If you're a DIYer, just know that you definitely don't want these folded up against themselves. You want to go the other way, like that. These pads are way easier to store because there's no, you don't fold them. You don't put them on yourself. And then if you have the clay bars, you would put it back in the container like this bag, which actually I wouldn't, because you saw how hard it was for me to get this out brand new. You can imagine when it's used. I usually just get some kind of plastic container, like these back in the day. I used to buy these, they come in containers like this. Okay. So anyway, that's a pro tip here on on this. And get it set back up here. Okay, so back at it. So we're lubricating the surface, right? Actually, this isn't mixed to clay lube strength. That's just regular ONR, and I want actual lubricant. So you get this plenty wet in the shade. Obviously not a hot sunny day with this boiling hot. Like anything with paint, you wouldn't want to do that. Okay, take your clay. So once you've done all the prep work like I've done, this part is about as easy as it gets. I'm going to actually do half so we can kind of do a before and after. So I'm just going to go, let's see, I'll go do this part right here. Okay, now the more experience you have, you will start to feel the difference. You will start to feel the little contaminants go away. Now this wasn't too bad. Right, this is my wife's car with a ceramic coating. I keep it pretty dang clean, so it's not terribly bad. But some cars have been neglected for a year or so. They get a lot on there. You'll really hear it when you rub this on it, and that means it's picking up. But as you go, it picks up those contaminants and then makes it smooth. Okay, and then do a section. Like if I was doing this car, I would probably do this whole section and then rinse this off. Put it in your bucket, slosh it around, and go do another section. Okay, so for the actual claying, that's it. That's as easy as it gets, right? But now how do we know if we did anything or not? Let's take a look. Now, we're not going to be able to see much, because remember, we couldn't see before. We couldn't see any of these contaminants. We just felt them. But we're going to dry it off here. And then you can do the, just rubbing your hand on it, feel the difference. Now here's the deal about doing that is your hands need to be really dry to feel that. If you just keep feeling it with the wet, you're not going to feel much. It'll feel like, oh yeah, I am. I'm making great progress here. But now, oh yeah, see that is like perfect. Up here, yeah. I can still feel a little bit. Again, this car, not bad. Professional detailer's wife's car. It's going to be in good shape. But down here, and then the real test is your sandwich bag. Put your hand in there. Oh yeah, and I can definitely tell the difference. So try that trick at home, with your car and see. So that's kind of proof that we've gotten rid of a lot of bonded contaminants that were on the surface of this car. And so now these are off of here. Now the other question is is this safe? Meaning, have we caused any damage? Well, as you can see on the camera, no obvious damage. But to a detailer, we may say, hey, you may have just marred or scratched that surface and won't be able to tell. So in the direct sun, you'd be able to see a difference. Here, if I marred it or if I didn't, okay? If I did, then as a professional, I can polish it, it's no big deal. In fact, we expect it to mar it a little bit. That's just part of the process, it doesn't hurt anything. But if you're a do-it-yourselfer at home and you don't have the ability to polish, or you don't want to cause too much marring, then you need to follow these steps to minimize. So all those steps I showed you, minimize how much marring there's going to be. The other thing is if you don't have direct sun, like me, I live in Portland, Oregon, we never get the direct sun. So there's other methods. You have lights. This isn't a professional light, of course, but we have detailer's lights that you can shine on the surface and see the difference. So I'm going to grab the camera and let's see if we can see a difference here. This way you guys know. This way you guys know if I'm full of it or not here. Okay, so up here, the spot I did not clay. So you look at the reflection of the light. We're looking for any marring or scratching contaminants that are already there. And then I'll come down here to the spot that I clayed. And see, I can see a little right there. Let's go up here. Yeah, see, it's the same here. Okay, so in this case, on a black car with somewhat cheap paint, right? I mean, this is a Scion. They don't use the best paint on these things. What I did not cause any marring. Now, it also has a really good ceramic coating on it, which will help with that. But even if it wasn't ceramic coated, following my process is going to help with that. And that's why I chose a black car to show you this. So let's say you've done this. You've clayed it, and you either still feel stuff on the paint, or you can still see stuff. Whatever it was that made you want to fix that, to use clay, is still there. And you're like, Jason, well, that didn't solve my problem. What do I do now? Well, a couple of steps. How brave are you? Do you really want to go after these problems on your paint as an inexperienced person that you could potentially cause quite a bit of damage? And by damage, the biggest damage is scratching. You can scratch your paint. If you go with something more aggressive, like we talked about, like this is the medium grade clay, for example. What does that do? It gets off more contaminants, but at the expense of possibly scratching the paint. Now again, a professional can use that because they know what scratches we can and can't get off. Or the trade-off between, well, you either need to get the contaminants off the paint or the car is going to be repainted. Okay, so you go, well, there's one way or the other. Well, we all know repaint is super expensive and we want to keep the factory paint as long as possible. So in that case, we're like, well, the lesser two evils is using a stronger clay product that may mar it up. Do you want to do that as a first-time DIYer? Only on a practice vehicle that maybe you don't care about. Okay, so those are some downsides there. If it didn't take off your issue, you gave it the old college try, now's time to seek professional help. Find a reputable local detailer, and by reputable I mean like a IDA member, you know, a professional, not just your local guy out of a gas station, and go ask them. So show them what you got going on, you tried it yourself, you know, go from there. Don't just keep going and going and going, and then when you realize you've messed it up, now go seek professional help. I make a lot of money on people that do just that, and although it gives me income, I hate it. You know, we don't want to see you destroy your car when it's like, well, I could have told you in 3 minutes how to do it yourself with the stuff you have, or even did it myself for you to solve the problem. Okay, so don't be afraid to seek professional help. So I hope that teaches you how to use a clay bar, what it's for, the good, the bad, the ugly. The questions or comments in the comment section, I'd appreciate it. And also subscribe to me. That helps me get the word out to others. Okay? Happy claying. Bye.